What did this farmer from Michigan, America, find in the ground that sent institutions around the world into a frenzy? This farmer was plowing his soybean fields when his eyes suddenly fell on a strange object. While we've made videos before about the thousands of things unearthed from the ground, this time we're talking about millions. Not about millions of dollars in treasure, but about things that have literally been unearthed from the ground for which science still has no answer. So let's get started. Number 1. This farmer in Argentina could never have imagined that something like this could come out of his land. He was walking around his property when suddenly he spotted something strange. What could it be? Something that looked like a dinosaur egg, but the truth was even more interesting. The farmer, when this unusual object turned out to be good, he couldn't leave it alone and began digging into the ground. The object was 3 feet underground and was extracted with considerable effort. By the time the news reached him, it turned out that it wasn't a dinosaur egg, but 10,000-year-old part of an animal's body called a shell, which these creatures used for defense. The surprising thing is that, despite all these years passing, its strength hadn't changed much. This is the animal that lived on this earth 10,000 years ago, and they were called flight mode on. When this shell was weighed, it turned out to be 108 kilograms. Meaning that if just the shell of the animal weighed 108 kilograms, you can imagine how heavy the entire creature must have been. Number 2. In 1972, in a Siberian mine at a depth of 72 meters, miners were working when one of them suddenly spotted a marble coffin badly stuck inside the earth. Without wasting any time, they began the task of extracting it because the coffin was heavier than they had expected. They began to bring it out. It had taken quite a while to get it out. The coffin was now outside, and it was time to open it, which they were already shocked just to find the coffin. They had absolutely no idea what they were about to see next. When the coffin was opened, inside was the body of a young, beautiful girl. The sight was so startling that it looked as if only a few hours had passed since her death. But the girl's body inside the coffin, in addition to the body, there was another thing. The entire coffin was filled with pink-colored water in which the girl's body was placed. He could barely stand looking at that water and decided to remove the girl's body from the coffin. As soon as the body was taken out, it began to dissolve right away. When the authorities learned of the incident, they immediately sent the coffin by helicopter to a science laboratory, where scientists began researching that water, which had preserved the centuries-old body. For years, it was believed that after so much time the water's actual formula had changed, and that it could be reversed. No, but one thing is certain. The people of that era were far more intelligent than those of today. In the U.S. state of Skin, farmer James Bristol's was having his fields excavated to grow his crops, and at just a few meters down, he came across a strange object. The moment he saw it, he halted the excavation. He had the excavation work stopped to find out the truth about the object. To investigate it, they needed to dig a solid foundation, so machinery was brought in and the digging resumed. As the work progressed, it became clear that it was the skull of a very large animal. James couldn't contain his excitement and informed the Michigan authorities about the discovery. Anyway, the object began to emerge from the ground. It turned out to be the skull of a very large animal. James couldn't contain his excitement and alerted the Michigan authorities. When the skull was sent to the lab for analysis, it was discovered to be the skull of an animal that lived on Earth 15,000 years ago, which was called the Grossi. As the excavation continued, the creature was revealed. It was said to look like an elephant, but it was considered very dangerous. It is believed that thousands of years ago, people would extract the teeth of this animal to make weapons, called Wali Muhammad. In appearance, these animals were like elephants, but they were considered very dangerous. It is believed that thousands of years ago, people would extract this animal's teeth and use them as weapons. These animals lived in cold and snowy regions, but as time passed, due to the ongoing global warming, their species has been wiped off the face of the earth. Number 4, however, is with a person, and that loggers often find many unusual things buried in the ground. But the most shocking incident occurred in India when, in the mountainous regions of Africa, a man was discovered who was not frozen, whose height was many times greater than that of ordinary humans, and whose footprints were also several feet long and wide. Science suggests that, thousands of years ago, human stature was the case, But as time passed, people's height steadily decreased. During the repair of the coastal highway in District Number 5, there came a point when the work had to be halted. This was taking place in Chile's Atacama Desert, where at an elevation of 120 feet, atop a rock, there were not 5, but 10, not just 5, but a full 75 were found, and even the Welsh workers couldn't understand what they were doing there, in the middle of the desert, 120 feet up on a cliff, far from the sea. What were these 75 large? What are these large whale skeletons doing? After all, when the investigation reached archaeologists, it was discovered that these whale remains are between 2 and 7 million years old. And it's believed that so many years ago, this very place used to be a seashore because whenever these whales were sick, it was their nature to come to the shore. But it's hard to say how so many whales could have died in the same place. Right, Jane?